Bună și bine v-am regăsit la Supliment de Bine, un podcast de sănătate și well-being creat de SECOM. Episodul din această seară este cu totul și cu totul special pentru că alături de noi avem un invitat de renume internațional, un adevărat reper în sănătatea copilului. Dr. Mary Clark este triplu licențiat în medicină, naturistă, homeopatie și medicină tradițională chineză, inclusiv acupunctură și botanică. De asemenea, Dr. Mary Clark este creatorul gamei ChildLife Essentials din portofoliul SECOM, produse pe care fiecare mamă le cunoaște și le prețuiește datorită beneficiilor dovedite asupra sănătății celor mici. Discuția va avea loc în engleză, dar veți avea disponibilă pe toată durata episodului subtitrarea în limba română. Vă doresc vizionare plăcută! Good evening, Dr. Murray. It's an honor to have you as our guest on the SECOM podcast tonight. We have this episode is focused, of course, on children's health and more exactly on how we can educate families in order to have a prevention approach when it comes to health, a subject that I know is very close to your heart. Could you please share with our viewers your professional journey? Have you always known that you are going to work in the field of holistic pediatrics?
Thank you. So my medical journey started, I first studied Chinese medicine, which is Chinese herbs and acupuncture. After graduating from that medical school, I studied homeopathic medicine and was very much impressed with homeopathy. And then after graduating from that, then I studied naturopathic medicine, which looks at food and diet and supplements and lifestyle. And then after graduating from that, that's when I opened my clinic and specialized more in a family practice, which evolved over the years into a pediatric practice, focusing more on children and integrating those three fields of medicine to treat children in the best way I could. So I opened my clinic in Los Angeles in 1990. And then throughout those first, 5, 6, 7 years, I really began to see the importance of diet and food and supplementation. And that's when I started formulating my own formulas to give to my own patients in my clinic. And from that, that's how ChildLife Essentials became what it is. And I officially created ChildLife in 2000. And now we have many different products, all based on my experience in the clinic and in about 28 countries around the world.
Wow. We're happy to be able to benefit from all this experience, and I hope we can learn so much from you tonight. Unfortunately, in Romania, we don't have a prevention culture. We would rather treat our kids when they are sick than try to prevent the disease. I'm curious, how are things in the States, and if you could share perspective over prevention versus treating the illness.
Sure. No, I think it's fairly similar in most countries, where people don't, or parents don't go to the doctor until there's some sort of issue or pain or problem. This not just in the health field, but this is in many fields of life, instead of taking the proactive approach. So, I think it's just part of human nature. But as we learn and as we get more experienced, I think it makes sense to start with the viewpoint of, what can we do proactively to make our life better, to make the lives of our children healthier, to make their lives better in the long run. And when you start looking at it this way, you look at the big picture, not just the next moment in life. You look at what's going to unfold year after year. And so that's when you start realizing, that what we do today determines what happens in the future. And that is so important with health as well, not just our lifestyle. But, the foods we eat, the water we drink, the supplements we take, the proportion of health in our diet, the exercise, all of these things are what create our health for the future. And especially for children, when we look at them for the first 7 years of their life, so many things evolve and grow in those 7 years that really set the platform for the rest of their life. We can look at just the brain. 90% of the brain, the physical size of the brain, has grown to the adult size by the age of 7. Okay, So those first 7 years, what happens there is so critical and important for the health of that child, your child, going forward.
Yes, in Romania we actually have a saying, the first 7 years are from home. It's probably the baggage you use in order to succeed or not in life. I don't know how things are where you are, but unfortunately we've had a rough year, rough winter. We've had viruses who grew during the pandemic, and we've had a flu pandemic, if I can say so. And on top of it, we're facing a new COVID wave. I am again curious how things are in the States, and if you have an opinion regarding the way the pandemic has changed our immunity.
Sure. Again, I think very similar patterns in a lot of countries, especially the countries who really locked things down the most. That's where you've seen the biggest repercussion afterwards, the biggest rebound effect after. Because really people were, in their house, closed down, so they weren't out in the world like usual, coming across different viruses, different bacteria, their immunity, growing antibodies. It's kind of like everything was put on pause for nearly 2 years. So now that we go back out in the world, our immune system is like 2 years behind where it should be in terms of encountering all of these different seasonal viruses. So it sort of makes sense that there's a rebound effect. People shouldn't be surprised. I think it's the consequence of being locked up for 2 years. And we saw the same sort of effect in America, where especially with the upper respiratory virus, it's just a very hard season, especially for children. And again, it's just, a part of our natural immunity is encountering these viruses and bacteria every day in our daily life. And a big part of that and how that happens is by being outside, being interactive in the community, going to school, all of these things. So for me, what it's really brought back is the importance of natural immunity and what can we do to build our immune systems to not only make them prepared for what we encounter, but to make them stronger for when we do encounter something.
I was thinking when my daughter was young, I had a doctor who said maybe you should look away from time to time when she spills something or she picks something off the floor. And I was wondering, where is this sweet spot between actually encountering a virus or a bacteria and not letting everything come in contact with the child?
True. I mean, I grew up in New Zealand, so a lot of time was spent outdoors, running around on the beach, on farms, where naturally you encounter a lot of different biological species. And looking back, I'm very happy that I had that, childhood, because I think it prepared us well. So I would, where's the sweet spot? I would go back in history to where, before the Industrial Revolution, where did most of us grow up? We grew up in the countryside, on farms or near farms or being a part of a farm. And so that is a natural sort of inoculation from all of those areas. So definitely a part of a healthy immune system.
So the answer would be nature, just
nature.
Go in nature as much as we can.
As possible.
Yes. I was thinking that our discussion is not limited to children, since the family is actually the frame, if the ambient for the child. So does adult immunity count as does it have any importance for the child, the parents?
Oh, definitely. Yes, of course, but especially obviously the mother's immunity during conception and pregnancy. That's where there's a lot of research and studies that show just how important that part is. But obviously, immunity is a broader subject. It's, dependent on our lifestyle, the foods we eat, the exercise we get, what we consume. So that part of the family group is, affecting the child after birth as well. So we have one time period during pregnancy. We have another period with the family after the birth and the environment that the child is growing up in on all aspects. And so this is where we see, really the parent, well, what I would say, the child really models the parents 98% of the time. There may be some other influences that come in, but really, the child is growing up within this environment, within this ambiance of the parents, the mother and the father, and brothers and sisters. That's really what creates the biggest impressions, the lasting impressions, and has the biggest effect on that child's health in all ways,
How do you see the next months or years, starting from now, considering the pandemic and the flu coming back in stronger and so on?
I think that not just Romania, but I'm speaking of the other countries I'm familiar. I think all these countries they're playing catch up. We're playing catch up for those years that we were sort of shut down. And so there's going to be a little bit of time period where we have to pay more attention to our own immune systems, and especially to our children's immune systems. What can we do to support them, to strengthen them, to really prevent them being so susceptible to what they're going to be exposed to, in the next months and the next year, because everybody's playing catch up a little bit. So we have to put more attention and sort of educate ourselves even a little bit more. What can we do preventatively, proactively to make this next year easier?
Okay.
And that's when we start looking at the supplements that particularly, help support the immune system.
Okay. Could you share some of these supplements?
Sure. So, looking at it, both firsthand in my clinic, and then also looking at the research, and then also looking at the research that came out of just this last period with COVID specifically. There's a couple of supplements that stand out as extraordinarily helpful in this territory that we're in now. And at the very, very top of the list is vitamin D. So we now know, vitamin D has been studied. I think there's like over 12,000 studies since 2000, just on vitamin D worldwide. But particularly over the last 2 years, we saw the importance and how helpful it can be in preventing any sort of viral exposure and preventing infection from that virus. Or not always preventing it, but even if you catch it, lessen the effect, lessen the symptoms if you do catch the virus. So at the very, very top, vitamin D for sure. And that's vitamin D3, of course.
Thank you. What next? You mentioned vitamin D.
Next always is my favorite supplement always is vitamin C, which people think, just old vitamin C. But, vitamin C can do so many things in the human body. It's critical for so many functions. And a part of just what it does is support the immune system. Other parts, it helps detox heavy metals, chemicals, petrochemicals, pesticides, even radiation. There are studies showing it can help the body eliminate radiation. So vitamin C has a wide effect on the immune system, not just directly supporting it, but by also helping to neutralize and eliminate all these other, pollutants, chemicals, heavy metals, radiation, things that can actually suppress the immune system. So it's doing two things. It's supporting the immune system and helping us to eliminate what can suppress the immune system. So vitamin C, number 2, I almost put them on the same pedestal, vitamin D and vitamin C. They're both so important. And then following that...
How much vitamin C should we take daily?
For children, I mean, at different ranges, from, I suggest in my own practice, once a child turns around 6 months of age or starts eating solid foods, then the parent can supplement with vitamin C. That's why we have it in liquid form, so it's very easy to give. And then, after a year, it's a slightly different dosage. And then after 3 or 4 years of age, a slightly different dosage again. So they're just increasing it gradually as the child grows, as the toddler, infant, child. Yeah. And then the third supplement I would put in that top category, and this goes all the way back to pregnancy and what the mother delivers to the baby after birth, is the colostrum. And then when we really look at what the colostrum is and what it does, that's when we start to understand just how beneficial it is for the immune system. So, all mammals, including we as humans, the first food that the mother gives to the newborn baby is colostrum. So it's not milk coming from the breast after birth, it's colostrum, generally for the first 3, 4, 5 days. So we have to ask ourselves the question, what could be more important than food for the baby when it's born? We think food is the most important thing. So what could be more important than food? And it's colostrum. And why colostrum? Because colostrum contains all the proteins and the peptides that actually switch on the baby's own immune system, independent immune system. While the baby is in utero and inside the mother, it's completely dependent upon the mother's immune system. But when that umbilical cord is cut, then the baby's immune system has to be activated. It needs to start fending for itself. And that doesn't happen properly or fully unless colostrum is given, because that's the switch. It's sort of like the baby has the hardware of the immune system, but until you put in the software, like the colostrum, to actually activate it, it doesn't work properly. Okay. So the colostrum contains all these different immune peptides that really that start the baby's immune system functioning. And the beauty is we can use all of that array of immune peptides at any age of life for any of us. It's not just for that. That's its initial purpose, but we can use it at any time to strengthen up our own immune system and also part of our digestive system, the microbiome, which is really a critical part of our immune system, maybe the most critical part too.
I would
Sorry,
ask
that's a
you
long
to-
explanation. But
No, it's wonderful, and I will ask you to keep that idea because I want to come back to it. Before that, I would like to go back to your practice and ask you to tell me what are the 3 most frequent questions that you receive from your patients or their parents.
Well, obviously, the first one is, can you fix my son or daughter's condition, the condition they're bringing them in to see me for? That's always the first question. Can you help? Number 2 is, how long is it going to take to fix this condition? And then number 3, would be, I guess in the long run, like, is there things that I can do to make my child healthier, in the future? So it's sort of like 1, 2, can I fix the current condition, and what can I do? What can I tell them? What can I suggest to improve the health of their child in the future? Because every parent is concerned about their child's health, but they're most concerned with what's going on right now.
Yes, of course. And what would be the most valuable advice you give them for the 3rd question?
For the 3rd question, in terms of what can they do, to help increase or improve or sustain their own child's health, really, number 1 is look at the family lifestyle, because that's the environment. I love the word you use, the ambience they're growing up in. So what are the foods that are being provided? What is the diet like? Is it natural, unprocessed foods, or how much, fast foods, junk foods, processed foods are involved? Number two is, obviously exercise is really important for everybody, adults and children. And then number three for me is the supplementation, because we're not living in the same world that a lot of us grew up on. So in the last 10, 20, 30 years, when we look back at the research and especially the studies, we see how food has changed, how much the environment has changed, and how many challenges the children are getting from the environment in terms of toxins, pollutants, and how much this affects their health. So the supplementation part comes in because it's making up for deficiencies in the child's diet. If they're not receiving all the essential vitamins, minerals, essential fatty acids, amino acids. And then the other part of the supplementation is this is what we need to give extra for the children to help them protect them from the environmental pollutants. So this is where the antioxidants become so important, which is the vitamin C, vitamin D, zinc, selenium. These are the actual nutrients that the body was designed to have to help deal with what we're encountering in the environment in terms of man-made pollutants, plastics, metals, radiation. So this day and age, we have to look at it both ways. We have to look at what can we do to make sure our children are getting all the essential nutrients they need to grow, the vitamins, minerals, essential fatty acids. And then number two, what additional things do we need to give to help protect them from the detrimental effects of what they're being exposed to in the air, the water, the food, the environment.
I love what I'm hearing. It seems that you are offering a recipe for a shield we can offer our children, and I think any mother or any parent in the world would like to give a shield to their child. You were mentioning earlier the fast food, and I remember that I just read a study that in Romania, unfortunately, we are facing a childhood obesity crisis. The numbers went up. We are one of the top European countries in a unfortunate top about childhood obesity. The adults are not doing so better either. So how can we help our children adopt a healthy lifestyle? For once, you already mentioned a few advices, but I want to focus, because I told you earlier to keep the microbiome in mind. I want to ask you if we can jump in their microbiome with the help of colostrum or maybe some other tools that we can use in order to shape their microbiome and have a healthy metabolism for the rest of their life. I'm thinking of the 7 years you mentioned in the beginning of our discussion.
In the beginning. Yeah, very, very important. And again, really over the last several years, the microbiome has come into focus in medicine. Before that, it was in the territory of the naturopathic doctors who said that everything begins in the gut. All disease begins in the gut. They've been saying that 100 years ago. And now in some way, modern medicine has caught up with that understanding and realizes how important the microbiome is. And so this is really the whole terrain, the ecosystem that exists within our small intestine and our large intestine. This is the microbiome. And we now understand that there are so many different beneficial bacteria that live with us symbiotically that are helping us digest food, absorb nutrients, keep out unwanted pathogens like fungi and yeast and viruses. So there's a whole system, a whole ecosystem that actually the number of bacteria in our ecosystem, in our intestines, outnumber the cells in our body. That's how important it is to keep the good guys there, because we're outnumbered if the bad guys move in. And so the digestion starts and takes place with the help of all of this ecosystem, in addition to the enzymes that the pancreas secretes and the gallbladder and the bile. But really, they're the soldiers on ground level who are doing the work of helping us digest, break down the food, and select the nutrients and where they need to go. The other big part of the microbiome, and so something else we could talk about all day together if we had, But, at least 50% of the lymph nodes that make up the immune system, the foundation of the immune system, are also wrapped around the large intestine. So this is also the basis of our immune system too, in keeping that in balance. So for those two reasons, critical part. And again, this is where the colostrum and the probiotics play such an important part, and how we can use them to supplement, to even if there's no problem going on, just to maintain and prevent and keep good health in the microbiome. So we should really add in those top three, the vitamin D, the vitamin C, the colostrum, and the probiotic as one. Colostrum and probiotics work together. So when you use them together, you get an even more sort of synergistic effect and benefit.
Are you thinking of some strains in particular, the probiotics?
Yeah, for children, always the bifidobacterium is number one. So it's, if you're looking for supplements, just make sure that that's one of the main ones there.
Okay, thank you. I would like to move to another section of this discussion, and it has to do with myths. Here in Romania, we have many myths, including in the health zone. For example, one of them is that children don't need to take supplements because they have a balanced diet. How would you comment on this?
Well, without being too harsh, I would say that, when we grew up, or when people grew up, 40, 50, 60 years ago on a farm in a very pristine country, like New Zealand, for example, because I'm familiar, then that was probably true. It was probably true because people grew their own food, they raised their own animals, everything was grass-fed, the milk was fresh, the cheese was fresh, and there were relatively no pollutants in the atmosphere that were assaulting our bodies. But unfortunately, the truth is that over the last 30, 40 years, the environment has changed so much, and purely due to two things. One, population increase, and industrialization. So any major industrial city in the world now almost has the same health statistics for children. Where asthma is about 200% increase in the last 30 years. Eczema, allergies also increased about 200 to 300%. ADD, ADHD, the attention deficit problems increased 300%. Autism around the world over 400% in the last 20, 30 years. So we have to ask, this is not just Romania or America, this is every industrialized city around the world. What is affecting children so much, so deeply? And really it comes down to understanding that the diet is not as good as it was, and the environment is affecting them with so many different pollutants. As parents, we just need to understand this. It's not like, there's nothing we can do about it. We just have to educate and understand this is the current milieu. And, there are solutions. What do we do to provide our children to help detox what they don't need and to support and add what they're missing in their diet? It's simple, but we need to know what to do. And we have to, as parents, we just need to realize this is the current situation. Sorry.
Yes. Thank you. Another myth or issue, if you want, is that parents don't trust that the supplements are well absorbed. So they ask themselves, okay, I give it to him, but it doesn't go where it's supposed to be.
Sure. Well, there is some truth to that, because there are different forms of the nutrients. Like one of the most common ones for children, we just focus on that, is calcium. And there are different forms of calcium that are used in different brands of supplements. So the most basic one is calcium carbonate, which a lot of companies use for children. But when we look at the studies, maybe only 10 to 20% of calcium carbonate is absorbed fully. At the other end of the spectrum, there's calcium citrate, which is another form of calcium. And when we look at that, the study shows 70 to 80% of that is absorbed. So it's true, we need to be aware of what form the vitamin or the mineral is in to get the best absorption. But the companies who do that well, then you can be assured that the child will absorb.
A final issue regarding this aspect is that parents fear that food supplements are not efficient because their benefits are not proven by clinical studies.
Okay. So again, I think this goes back to just sort of education where, like I mentioned before, since the year 2000, over 12,000 studies on vitamin D alone. 12,000.
So we need a better Google search.
But going back, let me just share a little story with you. So really the father of the supplement revolution or understanding how important supplements were is a Dr. Linus Pauling, who was a two-time Nobel laureate in America in the 1960s. So he had his first Nobel laureate in chemistry, his second one in peace, world peace. So a very well-rounded individual. And in the 60s, he really became interested in vitamin C. Before he was studying more chemistry, then he really got interested in what the effect of nutrients are on the human body. When he realized how important vitamin C is, he said that, okay, from this day on, I'm going to be taking 20,000 milligrams of vitamin D every day for the rest of my life. And my wife is going to be taking 10,000 milligrams. All the medical doctors in America at that time said, don't listen to this guy. He's crazy. He's a quack. It's nonsense. Okay. But he continued, and he had quite a reputation. So people took notice. So he passed away in 1994 at the age of 93. Still traveling and lecturing around the world, completely vital and healthy. And a lot of his critics, I'm sure, passed away a lot long, before he did. So the research goes back to 1960, and there's so much has occurred in the last 20 years. And in America, in 1964, the American Academy of Science, that was when they officially declared these are the essential nutrients that the human body requires in the right amount and the right dose every day. That's where the 14 essential vitamins, the essential minerals, and the 3 essential fatty acids. So they were classified in 1964 as essential nutrients because there was enough research back then to know how important, how critical they are.
Okay.
Sorry for the long-winded story.
No, it was beautiful. I'm definitely raising my vitamin C dose. I want to keep the same discussion, but I'm curious, what supplements do you take?
Okay. So I think, at the top of the list is a really well-rounded multivitamin mineral that gives us the essential vitamins and minerals, the basics. Then in addition to that, I take extra vitamin C, extra vitamin D, and zinc, because these three, the vitamin C, the D, and the zinc, also really prove themselves through this whole pandemic time in terms of how the three of them work together to defend against a lot of different viruses. So those are the basics. Then, the omega-3 fatty acids. In addition to that, I like to take magnesium every day. I think it's one of the things that helps our muscles and our brain stay alert. And then, depending on the day, for me, my eyesight is really, really important. I don't know why, but I swore like 20 years ago that I would never wear glasses in my whole life.
Wow.
So I started taking lutein and astaxanthin. So I take those every day for my eyes. And so far, so good. No glasses.
Congratulations. So they do
and
work.
Then they do. There's also a lot of research on those too. And then not every day, but every other day, probably some sort of probiotic. Mm-hmm. To help
every other day. Okay.
Yeah. Just sort of maintenance and prevention.
And my colleagues whispered that you have nephews. What do they take?
Well, actually, I have nephews and I also have a 12-year-old daughter, so I should start with her.
What does she think?
Well, it used to be easier when she was younger because I could give her everything I wanted.
Okay.
But since about since about the age of 9, there's only certain things I can give every day. But the basics for her is the multivitamin mineral, extra vitamin C, extra vitamin D, and occasionally the probiotics.
Okay.
Yeah. And she allows me to give those to her almost every day.
Oh, you're in luck. Mine is 10 and I'm still running around with the vitamins. I only have 2 more questions. One of them is that over the past maybe 20 years, while having all the experiences, your professional experience, did something spark up? If you could share, if you had any aha moments.
Sure. No, thank you. It's a great question. And truly, one of them I actually just mentioned, which was Linus Pauling. And really, when I discovered the depth of his research and intellect and understanding and importance, that was one thing that really sort of set me off when I first studied naturopathic medicine. But when I was researching and writing my book several years ago, I came across 2 studies that to me showed the whole dilemma and made it so clear what we need to know and do as parents and physicians. First one was a longitudinal study that was published in the Journal of American Medicine in 2005, where it followed children in America for the last 40 years. And 40 years ago in America, 1 in 50 children had some sort of chronic medical condition that they were growing up with. Chronic meaning they had to be on some sort of medication and care of a doctor ongoing. That was 1 in 50 40 years ago in America. Today it's 1 in 5. So we've gone from 1 in 50 children with some sort of chronic medical condition to 1 in 5, just in the space of 40 years. And that, when I was like, what is going on? This is why I had to understand as a physician to help children, what's affecting them so much. And that led me to this other study that I just mentioned, which also was published in 2005. And this was by a nonprofit environmental research group in America called Environmental Working Group. First study of its type ever done. They took 12 mothers from 12 different states in America who were pregnant. And at the moment of birth, they collected the umbilical cord blood from each of those mothers when they were delivering. And then they tested them for over 5,000 different industrial contaminants. Very extensive array. And what they found, the average in all of those 12 mothers from 12 different states, 287 different industrial toxins, including heavy metals, chemicals, pesticides, plastics. So when you see that that's the average, and then you realize that it's not just at the moment of birth, that was probably all of those were in the mother at conception, and this is what the baby was being exposed to in utero, because everything flows through the placenta. There's no barrier there. So this is what children are starting off with these days. This is the starting point. And then unless we do something to help them, support them, neutralize, detoxify, and eliminate all of those things, then the chances are that over time they will be affected by them. So 2 sides, this huge increase in childhood illness, the change in environment, studies like this that show why and what they are. And then at the same time, Linus Pauling way back in 1960 say, hey, start doing this now. Vitamin C, just vitamin C can help a lot. And now we know even so much more. The C, the D, the zinc, all these antioxidants help protect the human body from these challenges.
It seems we have many more challenges as parents, not only as parents, but in this discussion as parents than the generations before. Actually, this reminded me that in Romania, SECOM has created a platform that guides parents who want to offer their best support for their children. Because we all know life as a parent has plenty of challenges. I was wondering, since you mentioned your daughter, what was your biggest challenge so far as a parent?
I actually feel very, very fortunate because she's such an adorable child and she's had such a great, persona since she was born. So I feel very lucky and relatively, because I've met and treated a lot of children, I'm very grateful because I know there can be more challenges, but truly I've been very lucky in that front. And probably one of the biggest challenges just directly is as she's grown older, just what supplements she'll allow me to give her voluntarily every day.
I would like to wrap it up, and I would like to ask you to help our viewers to sum it up with top 3 prevention routines or advices.
That's great question. Thank you. So number 1, family lifestyle, which includes obviously number 1 at the list, exercise for the whole family, not just the children. The children will model the parents, so if the adults are exercising, it's a normal part of the children's activity too. But going back, that's where obesity is a part of that lack of exercise too. Number 2 is the family diet, meaning clean foods, organic foods whenever possible, unprocessed foods, a rounded diet, including protein, carbohydrates, not just all carbohydrates and fats. So healthy oils, vegetables, and good protein balanced on the plate. And then number 3, supplementation. Even if you're eating, or if you think that your family eating is a perfect diet, then take the extra supplements to help deal with the environmental stresses, the plastics, the metals, the pesticides, all of these things. Use those antioxidants and those essential nutrients to help maintain and prevent anything from the outside affecting your child. So.
Thank you so much. It's been wonderful to hear you talk tonight. I hope we'll have the opportunity to talk again, maybe on some other aspects, because I'm sure you have more experience to share with us. Thank you again, and have a great evening.
Thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure to be with you and to meet you and to talk with you. And I look forward to doing it again too. Thank you so much.
Sperăm că ați găsit răspunsuri la cât mai multe întrebări în cadrul acestui podcast. Noi ne revedem luna viitoare cu un nou episod al Supliment de Bine. Până atunci, nu uitați să intrați pe site-ul SECOM la secțiunea Ghidul de Sănătate pentru a revedea episoadele anterioare. Ne găsiți de asemenea pe Facebook, Instagram, YouTube SECOM sau Spotify. Până data viitoare, aveți grijă de voi ca să rămâneți bine!